3 spine-chilling true terror tales. Unexplained horror revealed in episode 173'S haunted secrets. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Sarah finished her shift at the Maplewood convenience store. Every creak in the floorboards echoed in her mind. Another late-night shift, another grueling day blended into night. Desperate to provide for Ella and Jake, she welcomed the grind. But tonight, her energy was drained, an unshakable weight pressing down on her. As she slipped into bed, visions of warmth and hope turned into twisted shadows. She jolted awake to her phone ringing, the screen lighting up the dark room. The voice on the other end was garbled, but the laughter of her children played in the background, suffocating her with unease. "I know where you are, I see you." The words hung thick in the air like fog, chilling her bone deep. Sweat pooled in her palms. Paranoia gripped her heart as she glanced towards the bedroom door, where the pale light flickered ominously. The next day, when she reported the call, the officers exchanged glances, dismissing her fears as the delusions of a tired mind. But as she walked home, anxiety tangled with her thoughts like a vine, suffocating her. The scent of magnolias usually brought peace, but their sweetness now felt sickly sweet, covering a lurking rote.as night draped over Maplewood. Strange events began. A shadow flickering past her peripheral vision, her grandmother's heirloom necklace missing from the drawer, the deep creaks resonating from the basement. No matter how securely she locked the doors, dread burrowed deeper. Sarah's senses felt heightened, even the gentle breeze outside seemed like hands creeping closer. Desperate for answers, Sarah dove into the town's folklore, searching the dark history she had once forgotten, a spectral figure haunting those who believed themselves safe. Whispers of envy and revenge wrapped around her thoughts, tightening their grip. Each night, she felt more vulnerable as the ghost of Maplewood echoed in her mind. Was this all a tale told to frighten children? Or was something sinister nesting within the walls of her seemingly safe haven? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The phone calls returned, each one more menacing than the last. The voice now hummed her children's names, sending a shockwave through her body. Just when she thought it couldn't get worse, she spotted the neighbor's gaze, a watchful, hungry interest in her plight. Sarah's paranoia swelled, the danger felt closer than she dared admit. One harrowing night, rustling outside made her heart race. With a shaky breath, she crept to the door, each creak paranoia-inducing as she felt eyes penetrating her very soul. A slip of paper was tucked under her door, jagged handwriting bleeding through her fevered thoughts. You should have stayed away from the truth. Trembling, she turned towards the basement door. The noises grew louder, beckoning, taunting. What awaited her in the shadows could unravel everything she clung to. The darkness wrapped around her like a vice, urging her toward a truth that threatened to devour her whole. Each heartbeat echoed louder as she grasped the doorknob, knowing she might uncover horrors that would forever alter her and her children's lives, or worse, bring the darkness ripping into their world. The knob was icy to the touch, sending a shiver racing up Sarah's arm. She hesitated, the cacophony in the basement pulsed with a life of its own. Each thud echoed through her mind, sending waves of terror crashing against her resolve. But in the back of her mind, the laughter of her children echoed, a haunting reminder of what could be lost if she didn't confront this darkness. Taking a deep breath, she twisted the knob and pushed the door open. The hinges screamed in protest, a banshee echoing throughout the lifeless house. She flicked the light switch, but nothing happened. Darkness swallowed her whole, wrapping tightly around her like a suffocating shroud. She fumbled for her phone, her heart hammering in her chest as the screen lit up, illuminating only a small circle of safety in the oppressive gloom. As she stepped onto the first step, the coldness seeped into her bones. Each step creaked ominously underfoot, and she fought the rising tide of fear that gnawed at her insides. The air was musty and thick, suffused with an ancient dread that pricked her skin. She could hear the faintest whispers, trying to worm their way into her thoughts, words she couldn't quite grasp but didn't need to understand to feel their malintent. A flicker of movement caught her eye, a flash of something pale darting just beyond her reach. Sarah's breath caught sharply in her throat. "Hello?" she called out, her voice barely more than a whisper. Silence swallowed her. She advanced a few steps further into the blackness when she felt the unmistakable sensation of being watched. "Get out," a voice rasped from the dark, so close it could have been whispering directly in her ear. She spun around, the light from her phone sputtering ominously. "Who's there?" There was no answer, only the heavy sound of her heart drumming in denial. Panic flooded her veins, urging her to turn back, but the instinct to push on to get answers held her firm. As she reached the bottom of the stairs, the shadows seemed to stretch and twisted against the walls, mocking her presence. An old wooden bench lay on its side, dust motes dancing in the dull glow of her flashlight. It was then she noticed something on the floor, her grandmother's necklace glimmering amidst the debris. Confusion twisted into dread as her fingers brushed against the cool metal. A rustle behind her made her spin around again. Fear gripped her throat as she caught sight of the figure, a shapeless silhouette, standing still behind a crumbling wall. Its eyes glinted in the faint light, void and hungry, drawing closer. "Stay away from the truth," it hissed. The voice cracked and warbled, echoing the same warning from the note. Sarah stumbled back, her heart racing as sensation blurred into absolute terror. No longer was this just legends and whispers, something dark had seeped into her life and was hungry for more. She turned sharply, bolts of fear shooting through her limbs as she sprinted back towards the stairs. The darkness clawed at her heels, promising to drag her back into its depths. Scrambling up the steps, she burst through the door, slamming it shut behind her. She leaned against it, breathing heavily, yet knew deep down this wasn't over. Without warning, her phone rang again, the familiar song of children's laughter warping into a hideous cacophony. It was her kids Ella and Jake calling from somewhere in the house. But their voices were not right. They sounded distant, as if echoed through a long, dark tunnel. Panic surged. "Where are you?" she yelled, racing toward the living room. "Mommy, we want to play." Their voices sang sweetly from the shadows, beckoning her. Eyes wide, Sarah felt the walls closing in around her, an illusion of safety crumbling beneath her. She needed to choose, confront the darkness or lose them forever. But something in that basement, a deeper truth, called her back. What was she willing to sacrifice to protect her children? One truth she did know: the more she ran, the harder it would catch her. And it wouldn't be long before it came to claim her, and everything she held dear. The door rattled ominously, and she realized, she wasn't alone. What horrors awaited her had only just begun to unfold. Terror tightened its grip around Sarah, each rattling sound sending her heart skittering like a frightened rabbit in a cage. The distant laughter of her children grew louder, more twisted, the echoes of joy fading into something that felt grotesque and alien. "Mommy, come play with us." The words slithered from the shadows, each syllable laced with a malevolence that chilled her to the bone. Panic surged through her veins, shaking her resolve. She pushed away from the door, her legs moving on instinct as she called out to her kids. "Jake! Ella! Where are you?" Their laughter jittered like broken glass in the air, each note sharp enough to draw blood. She followed the sound, casting her light across the dim living room. Furniture loomed like dark specters, each item a potential hiding place for whatever had invaded her home. "Stay close. I'm coming," she shouted, but as her feet moved, the sound faded. In a corner, the shadows thickened, folding into themselves like a dark promise. Sarah stepped forward, her breath mingling with the tightness in the air. Something wasn't right. She hesitated. The warmth of familiarity slipped away, replaced by a creeping dread. "Mommy," came the sing-song voice, now to her left, behind the old armchair. It was too soft. Too sweet. The air felt heavy, thick with anticipation, like the moment right before a storm. "Where are you?" she breathed, dread curling in her stomach like a vine. The laughter shifted again, now directly behind her, chilling and warped. She spun around, illuminating the empty room, but the presence was there. She could feel it, a weight pressing on her back. "Don't look!" A voice shrieked, a voice like a child, and yet nothing like her children. Sarah slammed her eyes shut. Dark tendrils of panic wound tighter. "I'm coming!" she yelled, desperation clawing at her throat. As she opened her eyes, she ran toward the stairs leading to the second floor, the faint voices beckoning her back as though they were a siren song, promising sweet reunions hidden in dark depths, but something stopped her. Her grandmother's necklace burned cold against her skin, a remnant of protection long forgotten. It urged her to remember, this wasn't just about finding her kids but uncovering the truth. With a shudder of resolve, she turned back. "I'm not afraid of you." The words tasted archaic, but she spat them out, finding a strength she didn't know she had. "Stay away from the truth," the shrouded voice echoed back, distorted and mocking, reverberating through the hall, drowning her in an overwhelming wave of fear. She pressed her palm against the wall, leaning against it, grounding herself in the material world amidst the shadow onslaught, but there was no time. She had to act. A spark of determination bubbled inside, igniting her as she recalled the stories her grandmother had whispered, tales of spirits trapping children, longing for life but feeding on fear. "Leave them alone!" she screamed, her voice rising, fueled by rage and desperation. Every instinct in her screamed to flee, yet she pressed forward. The shadows writhed, recoiling from her daring. She focused her light ahead, illuminating a door she hadn't noticed before, its wooden frame splintered and ancient, yet promising a path. "Mommy, please." The voices whined again, seductive and sinister, mixing with the chilling atmosphere of disquiet. Sarah dashed for the door, throwing it open, her breath catching in her throat as she stepped inside. The room was dim but held remnants of something familiar, the air buzzed with a subdued energy. "Jake! Ella!" she called, hope battling despair. Then she saw it, a flicker of tiny figures darting between shadows, both familiar and terrifying. Just as she reached for them, the door slammed shut behind her, sealing her inside. The darkness encroached, tinging the air with a suffocating grip. "Mommy!" The laughter rang out again, now mingled with cries. And as the darkness enveloped her, she realized the truth she had been avoiding. The shadows had been waiting for her to invite them in. The gnawing fear took a new form in her chest. Something worse loomed just beyond her grasp. Would she find her children, or only what remained of their lost laughter? As the darkness whispered her name, she braced herself for the revelation awaiting her in the yawning void. The air inside the room was thick, suffocating. Shadows danced along the walls, their forms shifting and twisting, almost mocking Sarah as she strained her eyes to see. "Jake! Ella!" she shouted again, but now her voice felt small, swallowed by the darkness. Fingers trembling, she flicked her flashlight across the room, revealing nothing but dusty corners and an old rocking chair swaying slightly, as if moved by unseen hands. The laughter echoed again, but this time it was closer, whispering against her ear. "Come play." Her heart raced, pounding heavily in her chest. The familiar sound felt off, distorted, each chuckle rippling with malice. She stumbled backwards, trying to escape the suffocating darkness. Her mind raced with images of her children, but were they truly here? She couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were playing tricks not just on her eyes, but on her mind. A faint glimmer caught her attention. She turned her head and saw a small, porcelain doll sitting on a shelf, the delicate features eerily smiling at her, its eyes glinting in the faint light. "Mommy, we want to play with Lucy," the voice chimed again, this time sweet and innocent. But the edge of threat hung in the air like a blade. "Who is Lucy?" she demanded, her breath hitching. The doll seemed to nod, a sinister agreement in its own unsettling way. From behind the chair, a child's hand appeared. Sarah's breath caught. It was small, delicate. Gratitude surged through her. Maybe this was Jake or Ella, but as the hand stretched toward her, its skin turned gray and mottled, nails jagged like broken glass. It wasn't them. "Stay away!" she shouted, her voice cracking. She stumbled back, her flashlight flickering. The laughter roared, shaking the walls and deepening her dread. The room seemed to contract, swallowing her with each desperate breath. "Mommy, don't leave us!" a voice wailed, and the walls responded, almost vibrating with fear. Tears blurred her vision. She could feel the darkness creeping towards her, an urging whisper entwined in the laughter, telling her she was alone in a graveyard of her worst nightmares. The doll's smile grew wider. "You're with us now," it said, the voice a sickening harmony with others joining in, a cacophony of lost souls. She staggered towards the door, slamming her shoulder against it, but it wouldn't budge. "Please," she begged, her heart a drum in her ears. She felt like a cornered animal, every instinct screaming to escape, but she was ensnared by the tendrils of the darkness. Voices wrapped around her, drowning her pleas. "You can't leave us, we just want to be a family." Desperation clawed at her throat. She remembered the necklace. "I command you," she shouted, forcing strength into her words. "Leave my children alone." The laughter faltered, as if her words had struck a raw nerve. In that moment of hesitation, she heard something else, a sound drifting through the din, softer than the others, a faint cry that resembled Jake's. "Help, Mommy!" Her heart surged with new hope. "Jake! Ella! Where are you?" Her voice broke through the haze, slicing through the darkness as she maneuvered through the shadows, the doll and its sinister grin momentarily forgotten. The darkness stirred, a wave of anger rippled towards her. "We found you. You belong with us now." The shadows lunged, but Sarah ducked, her heart aflame with fear and hope. "Get away!" she screamed, her own determination pushing back against the malevolence. She could not give in. Not now, not like this. Then, just beyond where the cries began to merge into the laughter, she saw a faint light flickering. "Mommy!" Jake's voice rose again, and this time it wasn't coming from a shadow. With every ounce of strength, Sarah charged toward that light, the shadows clawing at her heels. She realized she wasn't only fighting for her children, she was reclaiming them from the darkness, but as she reached the source of the light, a deafening crash echoed behind her, sending her heart plummeting. Had the shadows finally caught up? Or was something else lurking in the corners of that cursed room, waiting to pounce? As she burst through the final veil of darkness, Sarah braced herself for whatever lay ahead, knowing the shadows would not let her go easily. What awaited her in the light? The light wasn't warm, it was cold and harsh, like the flickering of an old bulb hanging on its last breath. Sarah shielded her eyes with her hands, adjusting from the dark. She felt a surge of hope despite the sharp sting, the thought of her children drawing her onward. "Jake!" she cried, desperate to find the source. A figure appeared in the haze, small, hesitant. Sarah stepped closer, heart thumping harder. Relief washed over her. It was Jake. But as the figure stepped into the muted light, her heart sank. It wasn't Jake's familiar face staring back at her. The child had hollowed cheeks and lifeless eyes. Its mouth twisted painfully into an exaggerated grin, so wide it looked like it could split its face in half. "Mommy," it croaked, "you've come for me, Jake." "Ella!" she shouted again, panic grip tightening her chest. But the form wobbled, blurring, drifting towards her like smoke. The air cooled even more, and an oppressive weight pressed down on Sarah's shoulders. Shivers raced through her as the echoing laughter from before coiled around her, thick and suffocating. "Join us, Mommy," a whisper crept into her ear. "No!" she gasped, taking a step back, heart racing. "Get away from me." But hesitation settled in her bones. Rushing toward the flickering light felt like running towards a trap, and doubt gnawed at her resolve. But where else could she go? The darkness was still alive, a pulsating mass at her back, ready to swallow her whole if she lingered. With trembling steps, she moved forward, holding on to the hope that maybe she'd find her real son in the luminous structure, maybe Ella too. Where are you? Her voice wobbled, laced with desperation. Suddenly, the shadows surged, a roiling wave curling towards her, mouths of darkness opening wide. "They're not here, you won't find them," they chanted, a menacing symphony that echoed chillingly in the room. The walls wept darkness, dripping shadows that draped over Sarah like a thick shroud. Then, through the swirling mass, she heard it again, a faint cry, "Mommy." Another shadowy figure emerged from behind the flickering light, but Sarah's breath caught once more. This was larger, its proportions awkward as it stumbled towards her, limbs extended, akin to a marionette jerked by unseen strings. "No!" she screamed, recognizing the distorted outline. This was not her daughter. It was some echo of her, a twisted reflection, skin gray and dull, hair matted like a dread of weeds. "Mommy! Help us!" it wailed, reaching out, its voice warping, stumbling over syllables as if it were losing the ability to speak. "Get away!" Sarah cried out, desperately clinging to her sanity. She felt the veil of darkness pulling back, revealing horror upon horror, shadows morphing into figures of lost children that clawed at her heart. "Stop! I command you! Let them go!" The resonance of her words sparked flickers of anger among the shadows, but they were quick to retaliate. The laughter twisted into cries of anguish, echoing off the walls, the noise reaching a crescendo so loud it felt like a physical force crashing into Sarah. She staggered back, fighting to keep her ground. In that cacophony, she heard real cries, fearful, genuine, piercing through the distorted echoes. "Mommy! I'm here! Please!" Jake's voice. Her heart exploded with an almost primal sense of urgency. "Where, Jake? Where are you?" She fought the pull of the chilling shadows, pushing forward, each step like dragging her away from a grave, but as the shadows recoiled, she glimpsed silhouettes moving among them. Could it really be them? She had to find out, but the darkness yanked at her, threatening to rip her apart. "Mommy!" Another voice, Ella, sauntered through the chaos. As she surged towards the flickering light again, breath steadying, she could feel the shadows thickening, gathering, readying for one last assault. Moments from claiming her. And just before she reached them, the ground beneath her trembled violently. The laughter erupted, louder and more taunting than ever before. Ghostly hands gripped at her ankles, dragging her back, the chill of the darkness creeping deep beneath her skin. "What do you have to lose?" a voice hissed as the light dimmed, threatening to extinguish. In a split second of blinding fear, her heart seized. With nothing left to lose, Sarah made one last desperate push forward. Could she really save them? But the ground cracked open. Something unseen loomed beneath. What awaited them in that menacing void? The ground split wide, a jagged maw of darkness, swallowing the last flickers of light. Sarah's instincts screamed at her to retreat, but the cries of her children shattered her hesitation. She dove forward, desperation guiding her movements as she teetered on the edge of the abyss. "No!" The shadows roared, a feral cacophony of voices swirling in anger, twisting like smoke around her. They clawed at her mind as much as her body, burrowing into thoughts of failure, of her children's safety lost forever. Fear coiled tight around her throat, choking her resolve, making it hard to breathe. The light flickered, and for a split second, shadows receded, revealing a glimpse of the faces she yearned for. "Mommy!" Jake's voice again. But the moment shattered like glass. A burst of shadow surged forward, and she felt cold hands grip her wrists, pulling her back into the void. She felt her heart pound. Could she really lose them this way? "Mommy! Don't let me go!" Jake cried, despair striking her like a knife. The hands wrapped tighter, their icy fingers slithering up her arms, dragging her into dark depths. Panic flared in her chest. "I want to let you go. I promise," she shouted, summoning every ounce of strength she had left. With a furious jerk, Sarah wrenched her arms free, but the pull of the abyss was relentless. It felt alive, thrumming with anger and desperation. The darkness grew denser, like a living thing wrapping around her like chains. She had to keep moving. The shadows twisted, forming grotesque shapes that twisted into monstrous depictions of her children. They bared their teeth, sharp and glistening like knives reflecting the flickering light. "Join us, Mommy." Their voices echoed, honeyed and sickly sweet. A surge of revulsion swept through her. "No!" she screamed, forcing herself to ignore their haunting features. "I know you're in there. You're not them." But deep down, doubt gnawed at her heart like rats in the walls of an old, abandoned house. Suddenly, the laughter morphed, shifting tones that skated along her spine. "You can't save them," a whisper coiled around her ear, slithering through her thoughts. "Shut up," she yelled, her voice cracking. She pushed through, stumbling over her own feet, her breath coming out in ragged gasps. The flickering light danced beckoningly, drawing her like a moth to flame. Maybe she could still reach them. A blinding light burst forth from the crack, illuminating the horrors surrounding her. The shadows shrieked, retreating momentarily as she felt the heat of hope. "Jake! Ella!" she cried, shooting another destabilizing wave of defiance at the dark. She leapt into the light, arms outstretched, hoping against hope. As she drew closer, the abyss beneath roared louder, and the ground trembled with furious rage. Just as she reached for the figures emerging, a hand shot up from the void, snagging her ankle. "No! No!" she gasped, panic clawing at her throat as she was pulled backwards, light slipping through her fingers. The darkness grasped at her, a ravenous beast ready to devour her whole. At that moment, everything felt unreal, like the climax before a great storm. In a heartbeat, she was torn from the light, plunged into the depths where all was silent but the fiery war inside her mind. The question crashed over her: what if she couldn't bring them back? What if they were forever lost? As the darkness closed in, suffocating, coiling tighter, she realized the horror wasn't just her children being lost, it was her own heart becoming one with the shadows. The pit bubbled, threatening to engulf her entirely. What secrets lay hidden within that terrifying void, waiting for her next move, her next scream? The darkness around her pulsated with malevolent energy, each beat drawing her deeper into its abyss. The cold seeped into her bones, weighty like chains shackling her spirit. While Sarah fought against the pull, her mind was a battlefield littered with whispered doubts and painful visions of what could be lost forever. She blinked, forcing her eyes open against the stale air thick with terror. The shadows were changing, morphing into something darker. Skeletal hands clawed upward from the void, skeletal and starving, yearning for her life force. "Mommy! Help!" A pitiful wail echoed, more ghost than flesh, as if the depths themselves mimicked Jake's voice. Clenching her teeth, she fought against the despair flooding her heart. "I'm here. I'm coming," she cried, even as the shadows twined around her limbs like vipers, tightening with every desperate movement. Beyond the clutches of darkness, she noticed a shimmer, a flicker of light similar to the sunlight pouring through her front window back home. Was it possible? A thread of hope in this nightmare? She lunged toward it, but the shadows shrieked in protest, a chorus of rage that shook the ground beneath her feet. The whispers grew louder. "You'll never escape, they'll never forgive you," she pressed on, blocking out the cacophony. She had come too far to let the darkness win, to give in to the terror curling in her chest. Her breath came in sharp gasps as she grappled with the unseen forces holding her captive, pulling her down into the blackness. Suddenly, the laughter returned, bright and ugly. "You thought they needed you? They accepted the darkness, just as you will." The shadows erupted with manic glee, surging forward like a wave, intent on dragging her down. "No! With a primal scream, she summoned every bit of strength. I want to join you. She kicked and twisted, wresting her body from their cold embrace. Each violent motion sent shocks of pain racing through her limbs, but she pushed through, fueled by the memory of her children, of their smiles, their laughter. That flicker of light was growing larger, clearer. As she fought, the ground beneath her trembled, the roar from the chasm drowning out her resolve. Mommy! Mom! The cries of Jake and Ella pierced her heart. They needed her, she needed them more than ever. Their faces flickered in her mind, a fleeting reminder of what lay on the other side of this nightmare. With renewed vigor, Sarah lunged toward the light, but just as she neared the edge, a monstrous shape rose before her, an amorphous creature formed of shadows and despair, its eyes glowing like dying embers. Yield to us! It bellowed, every word laced with malice. You will become one with us. I want tea. Her voice cracked, defiance spilling from her lips like a scream against the night. The creature lunged, darkness surging with a terrifying strength as it reached for her throat. The warmth of the light filled her with desperate courage. Could she truly fight to break through the endless night? In a moment of instinct, she dropped to the ground, her hands scraping against the jagged edges of the split earth, a jagged wound in the world. She reached for the light, praying it would accept her, pulling her through. But as she felt the glow envelope her, a searing pain shot up her arm. The shadows clawed back, pulling her down again in a desperate thrash. Let go. This was the moment of truth. As the light dimmed around her, dulling the colors she craved, the realization hit, she couldn't do this alone. Was help born from the very depths of despair? Would she dare to call upon the shadows or risk everything, even losing herself? Sarah felt the presence in her chest grow heavier. Where do you hide, my dear? The whisper curled into the edges of her mind, and she wondered what other horrors lurked within the void, waiting to be unleashed by her hand. What if becoming them was the only way to save her children? A loud heartbeat echoed in her mind, a rhythm of desperation. The creature loomed above her, a swirling mass of anguish, its eyes fixed on Sarah with an insatiable hunger. You're torn between worlds, it hissed, as if reveling in her torment. You know the shadows better than they know you. No. She gasped, clutching a splintering shard of light with bloodied fingers. I will not yield. Fingers of dark mist crept closer, brushing against her skin, sending her heart racing. The warmth of the light pulsed against her palm, urging her, as if whispering promises of safety. Yet the shadows wrapped tighter around her ankles, icy tendrils dragging her backward into the abyss, into the whispers that promised despair. Suddenly, an image burst through the shadows, Jake's face, distraught and reaching for her. Mommy! He cried, his voice breaking, and for a moment, the grip of darkness faltered. Jake! She screamed, the name echoing like a prayer in the suffocating void. She could almost feel his hand in hers, the warmth of his small fingers wrapping around her own. Sacrifice one to save the other, the creature crooned, a smile that was anything but kind spreading across its shadowy visage. But which will you choose? No, no. Panic surged within her. The choice was unthinkable. Could she really choose one child over the other? The thought twisted in her gut like a knife. Despair is all you have left, the voice dripped with venomous glee. Let me show you true power, embrace the shadows. I can take your pain away. The ground quaked beneath her, sending shockwaves through her body. Mommy, please. Don't leave me. Ella's voice shrieked in harmony with Jake's cries, an unholy symphony of anguish that sent Sarah's heart plummeting. No. She screamed again, burying the pain deep. The light flickered dimly, the shadows looming just beyond its reach. I will never give in. Yet the darkness laughed, as if her defiance only fed its strength. Hands thrust from the void, clawing at her clothes, at her fragile spirit. The cold gripped at her heart, tightening until she could hardly breathe. A blinding flash, a moment, a memory. The three of them together, the laughter, the love that was not lost. She could still grasp onto that reality. Jake. Ella. Hold on. Taking a deep breath, Sarah steadied herself. She could feel the energy around her, the chaos building, and in that moment, she summoned everything deep within. I'll do it, she said, her voice tearing from her throat. I'll trust the darkness to find the both of you. Silence fell, as if the shadows themselves paused, intrigued by her declaration. The monster tilted its head, studying her with interest. You choose to merge with the shadows? You think it'll save them? I don't care. Sarah spat defiantly, the emotion coursing through her. Whatever you are, you can't consume my love. Nothing can take that. The creature stilled, and for the first time, uncertainty flickered in its ember-like eyes. It didn't expect this from her, the acceptance, the boldness of her resolution. As Sarah embraced the shadows with reckless abandon, she felt their cold tendrils weave around her, merging with her essence. Pain shot through her heart, but the warmth of her love surged brighter, cutting through the darkness. The amalgamation of her fear and hope took form, igniting a fire within her. Embrace the night. The monster roared, but it was too late. Light exploded from her core, rippling through the shadows. They shrieked, recoiling from her brilliance. The very foundation of the darkness trembled, quaking under her power. Mommy! Help us! The voices cried, now merged with her own, an echo that filled Sarah with indescribable strength. As the shadows shattered around her, Sarah felt a rush, the thrill of freedom, the light and dark intertwining. She could find them, reach out and pull Jake and Ella through this nightmare, together. But as she surged forward, an unexpected force pulled her back, deeper into the void, blurring her vision. Where do you think you're going? The creature growled, infinite malice threading through its words. You think you can wield my power as your own? The light flickered around her, jittering as the shadows laughed again, and Sarah realized, the amalgamation of her essence was not just courage but also a fragment of something far more sinister. Could she control what she had unleashed? Or would the darkness consume her and them? And as she faced the chasm, now stripped of its safety, she knew the truth: she had awakened a force far beyond her understanding. In that moment, the shadows began to rearrange once more, a promise of terror creeping back, as they whispered excitedly. You belong to us now. What other horrors awaited when merging darkness and light? Darkness swirled, thick and cloying, refusing to release its grip on Sarah. Heart racing, she clutched her shard of light, the last remnant of hope that flickered in the choking shadows. It pulsed in time with her heartbeat, shaky and wild, yet steadying. I want to let you take me, she cried, her voice echoing through the nightmarish landscape, defiance bubbling beneath the surface, but the shadows responded with wrath, surging toward her like a tidal wave, relentless and furious. The monster's laughter reverberated, a cruel symphony that filled the blackness. You are foolish to think you have a choice, it sneered, claws of shadow reaching for her throat. Embrace your fate. You are entwined with us now. Each word dripped with sickening anticipation, and for a moment, her resolve faltered. Images of her children screamed in her mind, faces twisted in fear. But no. Inner strength surged again, shielding her from despair. She was their mother, she had to fight. Drawing from every fragment of light, she pushed back. Images flickered like fireflies: a family picnic, Jake's laughter, Ella's innocent smile. She could not let these memories become shadows themselves. I will save you, she whispered, her words a soft edict. The shadows snarled in retaliation, lashing against her like whips. You're weak. You'll never escape. They tugged at her consciousness, sapping her strength, but each time she pictured her children, they flared bright against the dark. Then, a terrifying revelation struck her. What had she actually awakened? What did it mean to wield the essence of shadow? And in that moment of doubt, the shadows thickened, swirling around her, whispering promises, smoothing her fears. We can give you the power you seek. Just let go. No. She screamed, throwing her arms wide as though to catch the very light itself. But the darkness pressed in poised, relentless, threatening to snatch the very sanity from her mind. Suddenly, she felt the icy fingers of the creature's hands at her temples, squeezing, penetrating her thoughts. They warped her memories, grappled with her most cherished moments. She saw Ella fall, laughter turned to cries. She saw Jake face down in uncertainty, a child terrified in a world he didn't understand. The dark mass twirled around her, entwining tighter, each tendril whispering a perverse lullaby to surrender and join. It's futile to resist, let us show you true power, let us bring them to you. The conflict erupted. Unsettling images surged. For every moment of love shone, a matching fear grew. She could feel the shadow's seductive allure prickling at her skin, promising safety if only she would submit. But what would that cost? Suddenly, with a flash of bravery, she spat into the void, I won't give in. I would rather suffer than let you win. Light exploded from within her, overwhelming, a beacon in the swirling dark. Yet in that moment of clarity, the shadows howled, lurching backward, tearing at their own freedom. Claudia, imprisoned within the dark, powerless yet formidable, felt it a shift. They feared her light. Interesting, the creature mused. Its molten eyes bore into her soul. But can you endure the consequence of wielding such power? A tremor rippled through her, fear crackling at the edges of her consciousness. As the shadows recoiled, Sarah found her strength waning. The shadows expanded again, lunging forth like a pack of starving wolves, clawing at her mind and muscle. Desperation clawed at her throat as she felt the light flicker. Could she control what bound them? Would this light be enough to shield her, or would it cast her deeper into an abyss of darkness beyond imagining? And as Sarah braced herself, a hidden truth began to claw its way to the surface. She was part of the shadows now. What would they demand in return? The walls of reality blurred, and she sensed the impending doom creeping closer, knowledge and dread intertwining. As her heart thudded against her chest, she had to wonder, was love strong enough to break the hold of darkness, or was she destined to become one with it? With each passing heartbeat, the shadows loomed larger and more insistent. They whispered accusations, promises, and lies, beckoning her to take one more step into the unknown. What awaited her on the other side of that threshold? And would she ever find Jake and Ella in this twisted web of shadows and light? Sarah's heart raced as the shadows coiled around her, whispering sweet lies of comfort and power. The air crackled with darkness, feeding on her fear as the cacophony of her children's distorted laughter echoed through the void. Mommy! Come find us! They called, beckoning her deeper into their nightmare. No! She shouted fiercely. I will not give in. Her fingers tightened around the shard of light pulsing in her palm, its warmth fighting against the icy tendrils trying to pull her under. She took a deep breath, inhaling the memories of laughter and warmth, of family moments shared, the cookouts, the bedtime stories, Ella's small hand wrapped in hers. With every inhale, she felt strength flood back. I am their mother, she whispered, voice steadier. I will save them. As she took a step forward, she envisioned their faces, Jake's mischief, Ella's bright smile, overpowering the darkness that threatened to consume her. But in that moment of courage, the shadows began to writhe violently. You think you're strong enough? You think light will save you? The monstrous figure loomed closer, swirling amidst darkness. I know your heart. Each syllable dripped with contempt. I know your fears. You can't protect them. Watch me. She roared, summoning every ounce of defiance within her. Suddenly, the memories ignited a fire in her heart, and she hurled the light with all her strength. It burst forth, shattering the darkness around her with a brilliant luminescence. No! The shadows recoiled, screeching in pain, their grip slackening as clarity rushed back into her mind. In the brilliance, she caught a glimpse of her children, their actual forms emerging from the darkness, tethered by the faint threads of light she had released. Jake! Ella! She screamed, reaching toward them, but just as she was about to grasp their hands, the ground beneath trembled ominously, fissuring as the malevolent creature roared in fury, rallying the shadows for one last assault. "Embrace your true power!" it screamed, voices of the forsaken children blending into a wretched symphony. "Stop!" she cried, gathering her courage. The eroded edges of her heart were heavy with love. "I choose to fight for them. I choose love over this darkness." With a jolting determination, she lunged forward, the light exploding from every pore, driving the shadows back in waves. Jake and Ella, now visible, ran toward her, their forms becoming clearer. "Mommy!" they cried, their small arms reaching out. The entity screamed, its strength waning under the brilliance she wielded. "You cannot save them!" it hissed, lashes of darkness thrashing around, yet Sarah pressed on. "I won't let you play with us anymore." She yelled defiantly, and with the force of a mother's love, she thrust her light into the very heart of darkness. In that moment, as the brilliance surged forth, tendrils of light broke the shadows apart like fragile glass shattering, illuminating every dark corner of the room. The agony of crushed shadows echoed like a dam bursting, revealing an escape, a vortex of clarity pulling Jake and Ella directly into the light. "Mommy!" they screamed as they were enveloped in warmth, their forms glowing brighter than ever. Fear turned to pure joy as she enveloped them in her arms, laughter bursting forth like bright fireworks. The malevolent creature sputtered, collapsing into smoldering ash and fading echoes. Its voice trembled amidst the chaos, "You cannot," and with its final whisper, it was gone. Sarah held her children tightly, warmth flooding her senses as the darkness distilled into nothingness. "We're free," she breathed, kissing their foreheads, laughter bubbling to the surface like a lost treasure re-emerged from the depths. They emerged from the remnants of the shadows, stepping back into the normalcy of Maplewood, their home surrounded by the soft light of morning. She looked at her children, now safe in her embrace, and felt an overwhelming rush of gratitude flood her heart. "Let us go home," she said softly. Together, they faced the dawn, laughter spilling freely between them as they walked hand in hand, stronger than ever. And as they stepped away from that shadowy past, Sarah knew their bond had fortified against any darkness lurking ahead. She would fight any storm to protect her family's light, and they would face each day together, a radiant force against the night. Now, fellow viewers, as this story closes, it's not the end but a new beginning. You need to subscribe now and hit that bell so you don't miss out on more thrilling tales. Smash that like button and fuel the algorithm, letting the world know your reaction. Flood the comments with your thoughts about Sarah's journey and how she overcame the darkness. And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel this heart-pumping climax. Show your support and step into the light with us.